All right. So, what I intend to do here over the course of the next month or so is to bring everybody, both on the YouTube channel, but mainly on Inside the Hex, to bring everybody up to speed on the team at Obsessed Garage. I think it's a value, at least I would want to know. If I was interested in the company, I would want to know, who's working for it and why people were chosen and a little background on them. And so we started this series about 6 months ago, where I called it Washington Interview. But the problem is it's so darn hot. And for me to sit there and wash 20 cars now is not all that practical, because it takes hours to shoot a video like that versus we can sit down in an hour or an hour and a half or something like that and get to know everybody. And so we interviewed, this is Chris Haynes. We interviewed Chris, Kyle, which that video messed up, so that was never launched on Inside the Hex. We did Mike and Ted, and so I'm going to do Chris, Mike, and Ted on the main YouTube channel, which you're watching here. And then if you want to see the other interviews, if you find them interesting, I'm putting the rest of them on our membership platform, which is called Inside the Hex. So you go to obsessedgarage.com, go to the members platform. It costs $8 a month, $60 a year, or if you're going to buy lots of stuff from us, become a Hex Plus member for $240, and that gets you 10% off and free shipping on most things in the store. And so the intent here is to get to know everybody, and so I'm going to take them back from childhood all the way through to what the heck are you doing here and what do you do, and sort of cue people onto who the team is, and then at the end of it, maybe I'll do some sort of wrap up of what my vision is for everybody and what the corporate structure is and all of that stuff. So it's fascinating to me because I started from zero and now we have a small army of people, and seems to be growing all the time. So first thing I'm going to start everybody off with is, so what is your role here today? What do you do? What would you say you do? So bring us up to speed on what your capacity is here at Obsessed Garage.
Okay. As Matt said, my name is Chris Haynes, and I am the business manager, I guess is my official title.
Unofficial, official, yeah.
I do a little bit of everything. And so that could be anything from I handle all the books and the accounting, HR, payroll. When we have new products coming in, I kind of help build those in the background on the back end. Bryce and I work on stuff like that together. I work with your dad on here's what's new coming in so that we can set it up so he and his employees kind of know what they're looking for when they go to pull these new items. I also, it's funny, this changed because we did our video 6 months ago now. It's been, and it's changed even since then. This morning I was balancing bank statements, kind of reconciling and paying our vendors, our suppliers, some of them, because I do that pretty regularly because they have different schedules on who gets paid when, how much they get paid. So I kind of handle the way I tell people, because it's kind of hard to explain, is I basically my job is to run the day-to-day operations, the business side of it, so that you can do your thing, the media team can do their thing, and the fulfillment team can do their thing, and not have to worry about if we paid our water bill, or if we're behind on payments to Dirt Killer or whatever. So
I think it is, you've taken all of the direct things off of my plate that I would have otherwise been doing, like, and even for a while that we've had a slow transition of, like, I don't look at the bank account every day like I did at one point when we were managing it to the to the month. We have a little bit of a surplus, and the goal would be to have a massive surplus in order to be able to to just live without an agenda, without having to worry about it. And so Chris takes the direct responsibility off of me of those most important things: taxes, insurance, a payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable. And what'll happen, and this will sort of be the general theme of all of these interviews, is even from 6 months ago, is the narrowing of positions, right? The narrowing of people's roles into, a long-term goal would be to nut it down to where everybody is focused on what they enjoy most. Now, every role, every responsibility has some tasks that have to be done that may not be, not something you'd wake up in the morning and be like excited to do. But if the general, like, I don't love the sweating washing my car, but I love the result, right? And so I'm willing to put in the sweat in order to get to the fruit, which is the job or the career as a whole. So let's go back to the beginning. So those of you who are members of Inside the Hex have heard this story, but maybe we'll fill in some gaps that maybe we missed while I was focused on washing. So where were you born? When were you born? Take me back. So tell me the born to elementary school, starting high school story.
Okay. So I was born August 27th, 1978. So I'm a month away from my birthday. Today's July 27th. In Decatur, Georgia. My parents lived in Stone Mountain area. I was born in Decatur, lived in Stone Mountain. Basically lived with my grandmother for the first year or two of my life, I think, because both my parents were working at the time. And so she was kind of my nanny / babysitter. Lived in the Atlanta area, moved out to Douglasville, Georgia, which is west of Atlanta, and lived there till I was 5. We moved to Ocala, Florida, when I was in kindergarten. Ocala is about 35 minutes up the road here from Lady Lake. So from kindergarten all the way through high school, I grew up in Ocala. I still live there now. I went away to school, came back. We'll get to that later.
How come you don't have a Southern accent?
I don't know. Well, I think I do to people who aren't from here, because sometimes when I travel, like when we were in New York, and someone remarked on my Southern accent, I was like, I don't really think I have one. But
yeah, I don't think one.
Especially when we go to Alabama, that's where my wife's family, some of her family lives. It's thick there, and I went to school there, but I didn't pick up.
Do your parents have a Southern accent? I don't know that I.
No, they don't either.
Huh.
My mom was born in Virginia, my dad in Indiana.
Okay.
And they met in Georgia.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
so high school, you went to Bellevue?
No, I went to Lake Weir. Bellevue opened my senior year, but we didn't have the option to go.
Okay. And so what was your, what was high school like? Were you an athlete? Were you a scholar? Were you a student council guy? I mean, what was your bag in growing up?
I was a scholar more so than an athlete. I played basketball in high school, and I got the Mr. Bookworm achievement my senior year. No, I was more into school grades. Didn't care too much. I played sports growing up and enjoyed it, but I didn't like it enough to want to play it at the varsity level for the most part, or go to college or do anything like that and play.
So tell me about the transition. So from high school to college, and why college? What did you major in? What was the thought process in high school of going to college? Were you the first person in your family? Were you the 18th person in your family? What was that like?
Oh, I was one of the first in my family to go to a 4-year university. My mom went to nursing school, so she got her nursing degree. She's a registered nurse. My dad had gone to some technical school, but he ended up actually, the year I graduated high school, he graduated with his bachelor's.
Okay.
And so that was... or may have been a few years later. I don't remember. Anyway, he had a much later start when it came to that. He had actually went on and got his doctorate, so he's now a doctor, Philippines.
So what did he do? What was his career while you were growing up?
He was an associate pastor at First Baptist Church of Ocala. He's now in Tampa and serves in a similar position there at a church, Idlewild Baptist Church in Tampa. But that wasn't a requirement. I mean, he started out as a youth minister. That's kind of how it goes in that thing. You come in as a youth minister when you're young and hungry, and then you get older and you get tired of the kids, and you're like, okay, well, let's move on to another part where maybe you fit better, and then eventually maybe work up to be a pastor. But he was always the associate pastor, so kind of the second one. There was a head pastor, and he was associate, and he would do a lot of counseling, and he would, as other jobs at church would open up, he would fill those briefly until somebody came in to be the new kids minister or the senior adult minister, whatever. So
did you grow up as like running around church? Wednesday nights and Saturdays,
Sunday morning,
Saturday night, Sunday morning, all day, and
all the time.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, got a little brother, little sister. My sister Jennifer lives in Apopka. My brother Michael lives in San Francisco, but he's actually in Apopka briefly because he's working from home technically.
So then you're in high school and you're kind of loosely playing sports. Yeah, I picture that of you. You're like, yeah, I'll play, whatever.
I was tall, so I believe.
Where I was like, I want to kill everybody. I want to be the So you're playing because you're tall, but you're studying mostly,
Right.
And then you're applying to colleges. So what do you remember? What schools you applied to?
Yeah, but funny story about the basketball first. So my junior year I tried out, and I was 6'1", so I wasn't all that tall, but I got cut at tryouts. So it's like, okay, whatever. So I practiced some more, and then I also grew 4 inches the summer between my junior and senior year. So I went back my senior year. I was like, well, I'll try again. So I tried out. Coach comes up to me. He's like, hey, you're a senior? I said, yeah. He said, how come you didn't try out before? I was like, well, I did last year, but I was 4 inches shorter. So I made the team, but I was the only one who made the varsity team. Everybody else went to JV. And so all the varsity basketball players first period had basketball class. So it was like PE basically, but they did weightlifting and they actually practiced and stuff. Well, I had AP Calc first period, so I couldn't. So we'd have practice from 4:30 a.m. till 7 a.m. in the mornings. Then I'd go at 7:15 or whatever, whenever school started. I'd shower and go to calculus, and they'd all stay in the gym and get more practice in. So that was my role. But back to college. So I did really well in school, made good grades, did really well on SAT, ACT. I was kind of good at those.
So were you like preparing, like making sure I'm going to take the right classes? I'm going to take. Were you very intentional about your preparation for PSATs and SATs and ACT and all that stuff?
Kind of. College it wasn't ever seen as an option. It was, okay, you're going to go. I was like, okay, well, I'll go. And I did really well in school. I liked school. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. I didn't like science very much, but I was in all the honors classes for whatever that's worth all the way through, and I kind of hung with that crowd because I realized, okay, these are some bright kids, and they're going to go on to do some good stuff. So I wasn't intentional in terms of, okay, I want to take all these honors classes, just like, well, that's the next one, so I'll take it.
So none of the people that I knew that around here were the bright kids, right?
Right.
We won't have them watch that. Sorry to our local friends here.
No comment. But yeah, it was. What's a good word? I wasn't intentional. We'll say that. I just happened to be good at it, and so I enjoyed it.
So then you're applying to school. So what schools did you apply to?
I applied to a couple in the state of Florida, University of Florida, and FSU. Those were kind of no-brainers. UF's gotten a lot harder to get into now, but got accepted to those.
So this was 96.
Right, class of 96. Yeah. Applied to Samford, which is where I ended up going. I applied to Duke, Wake Forest, I think were the other ones.
Not Sanford, Samford.
Sam, S-A-M, not Stanford.
Okay.
No, Samford.
So you, which is, what, is that 10 hours away, something like that?
Yeah, it's about an 8-hour drive up in Birmingham.
So you graduate high school, you pack your crap, and you go up there. What was the college experience like to start?
My college experience was awesome. I had a great time. I had a little 1988 Dodge Ram 50 pickup truck that I did not fit in very well. There's no AC. There's no power steering, no power windows, no power anything. So when I would drive to school, I'd have my window down so I could breathe. And this arm would always be like way tanner than this arm because the window was down. I get sun on this arm. But college was awesome. I had a great experience. I was fortunate in that I found a great group of friends. I meet I was a teacher later, and a lot of my students would go on to college to have just miserable experiences. And I was like, man, how do you do that? Because I didn't have that experience. I went and had a great time. But I got in pretty early with a good group of friends that we all stayed basically the whole time. We finished out together, and we did everything together.
Was that group from dorm, or was it from major, or what did you?
It was all dorm, basically. We had one buddy who was in Ocala. We'd grown up since elementary school together. His older brother went there. That's kind of how we ended up there. And so we hung out, but we did not room together. But we each had roommates, and we kind of met. And then from there, it was all within the dorm was our group of friends, how that started.
How many kids are there?
I think around that time there were maybe 2,500 undergraduates,
Okay.
which was smaller than my high school.
Mm-hmm.
We had 3,000 at Lake Weir my freshman year.
And so is it a college or university?
University, Stanford University.
So there's the liberal arts school, there's business school. Was there an engineering school?
No.
So and then what other schools are there? The school of nursing.
They had nursing.
And then is it liberal arts?
They had a law school.
I guess you have math and
graduate,
science. Yeah. So you're in college. What's your thing? What are you into when you're there? Are you just studying?
We didn't do as much studying as we probably should have. We got the grades we needed. I kept the grades I needed to keep my scholarships, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't put in a ton of effort. I wasn't super focused on my major and loving every second of it. We were just having a good time.
And what was the major?
Computer science was the major.
Okay.
It was math at first, and then I got to some of those math classes and started shaking my head. I was like, yeah, I'm done with this. So ended up with like a math and a business minor, and then a computer science major.
And so are you working while you're in school?
Yes. And I just watched a piece of our video the other day. It made me chuckle. So my mom told me when I went to school, okay, you can't work the first semester. Focus on your grades. Don't need distractions. No work. I'm like, okay.
They're paying for it?
Yeah, they're paying for the vast majority of it. I had scholarships that covered over half of the cost, probably close to 75%, and then they paid for most of the rest of that. And so Mom was like, no work in the first semester. I was like, okay. So, of course, like a week into school, I look and there's signs around campus, hey, looking for interns, the Birmingham Bulls Hockey Club.
Okay.
I was like, well, that sounds like fun. I had no idea anything about hockey, never played hockey, didn't know it, but it sounded like a fun thing. So I went, talked to them, interviewed with them. Two of the guys who worked there also went to Sanford. They were 25, 30 years old at the time. And so we hit it off. They were super nice guys, like, hey, you want to come do this? I said, sure. And then I later found out it could be a class. So I took an internship class my freshman year. I added 4 credits on top of what I was taking. So I think I took 19 or 20 credits my first semester, which is a lot. But those 4 were easy. And so 2 weeks in, I had a job, but it didn't pay anything. So I quickly realized, okay, well, this is an internship. I don't get paid, so now I need a job where I can actually make some money. So I got a job on campus working in the Office of Student Records.
Okay.
And so then I had those 2 gigs the first 2 years. I did some other stuff along the way. Worked for Chick-Fil-A, worked at Southern Progress Corporation right next door to campus. They published Southern Living and all those cookbooks and stuff. So I was working basically the whole time I was there.
So you're in school. Are you participating in a lot of like university stuff, or are you just going to class and working? I mean, what?
Yeah, we didn't do a whole lot. I mean, we hung out in our dorm, kind of our crew. We do fun stuff, but we didn't. I mean, we go to. We didn't do any. We weren't in fraternity. We didn't do that scene.
Were you playing intramurals like ultimate?
Oh yeah, we played
crap?
every intramural sport.
Yeah.
Basketball, volleyball, football, ultimate frisbee, softball, anything you could do. We would get a team together. That was fun.
Yeah, I could see that. I was too cool to do that. Except for volleyball. I'd play intramural volleyball and just annihilate. Because no one even knew we had a volleyball team. So I'd just go and kill everybody. It was great. So then, so you're working, and then what's your same question about high school? How intentional were you about, majoring in computer science and that becoming your path? Did you have intentions there? Was it just, I'm doing this because it's the hardest thing I could do? What was the thought process at 20 years old?
Right. Well, I chose computer science because I enjoyed working with and on computers. And as you've mentioned before, that it's also about problem solving. And I enjoy that part of it. And okay, well, here's where we are. Here's where we want to get to. What do we need to do in between to get there? Which I enjoyed that aspect of it. As I got more and more into it, my junior and senior year, I then was working for Chick-Fil-A in a couple of different capacities. And I realized, okay, well, I'm probably not going to do this computer science thing. It would be nice to have that option when I graduate. And there are opportunities there because of our school and the connections that were there. But as I got older, I realized, okay, that's probably not going to be the path I'm going to take, but it'll be good to have it like basically as a backup plan. And I can always do that if this other thing doesn't work out. So I enjoyed the classes. I enjoyed my cohort that I was with. We were pretty tight. We didn't do a whole lot outside of class together, but we got along really well in class and worked well together. It was this very small group.
Yeah, well, as the same thing happened, I think, with most majors, is as it narrows, as you narrow toward graduation, people drop out, they transfer out.
Right.
Very few people in a computer science or engineering or mathematics transfer in. Everybody transfers out. Mm-hmm. And so you start with hundreds and you'd graduate 20. And those are the people that you've spent a lot of time with.
Yeah, it was a good crew.
Yeah, lots and lots of time. So now you're nearing graduation. You're living the college experience. I picture you trying to circumvent the system with meal plans and trying to nickel and dime your way through it I had a lot of friends like that as well, where I'm just, what's the most expensive meal plan? That's what I want. How do I stay on campus as long as possible? Or were you trying to get off campus and get an apartment?
No, I greatly enjoyed living on campus. We had some friends who moved off campus. I greatly enjoyed that part. I did cut back on meal plans from 19 to 12 to eventually 7.
And then you'd try to manage that, trading meals with people and stuff.
Plan it out. We'd trade cards and stuff. And we also, every semester, I think you might appreciate this, we got on our card, we got $100 added for the food court.
Yeah. So, we had that. What they called it points on our card. You get like 200 points as part of your meal plan. You could use that to buy like ice cream at the little store that they had in front.
So we had $100, but if you don't use it, you lose it at the end of the semester, and they just reset to 100. Mm-hmm. And I had friends who wouldn't spend it all, and I was like, man, you got to spend that all. So we had a little competition to see who could get their balance closest to zero.
Right.
And so in the beginning, you're just like buying whatever, cheeseburgers, double cheeseburgers from Burger King, Chick-Fil-A, buying everything. And then once the semester gets closer to an end, every receipt you get, it would tell you, okay, here's your balance. Mm-hmm. And so we were getting down to the end, and I was watching. I was like, okay, so I'd plan it out. And eventually, on my last meal, I still have the receipt. You probably believe that because it's true. But I have the receipt. I had 0.01. I had 1 penny left in my account.
Yeah.
And so I won by a wide margin. Mm. So yeah, I planned it out.
I could picture that move. So now you're what's the ascent into your first job? What is that? How did that work? How did that work out?
Well, as I said, I had junior year, I kind of got serious about working with Chick-fil-A. We started my freshman year dressing up as the cow and the chicken. And we'd do that on the weekends when I wasn't either working on campus or working for the hockey team. And so we dress up like the cow and the chicken, $10 an hour, Chick-fil-A food while we worked, and Chick-fil-A coupons afterwards. So it was a great deal. Mm-hmm. And through that, I met some people, and they're like, hey, this is a fairly bright guy. We might be able to have him do something else besides dress up like a chicken. And so I got a position called a unit marketing director, which was basically I had 2 stores that the guy owned at the time or ran at the time. And I would put up all the signage when there were new promotions. I would go around to local businesses, take coupons, take samples, hand stuff out, and just sort of spread the word about Chick-fil-A and do that sort of thing. And so then when I was working with him, he's like, hey, you have some potential to do other stuff than Chick-fil-A. So that's where junior and senior year, I was kind of leaning more that direction. I had some offers when I graduated in computer science because I did well in my major, and we had that like career day thing where they come in and they present stuff and we go out and meet them. And so I had a couple offers like that, which were great, but that's not really what I wanted to do at the time. Mm-hmm. And so long story short, I, after graduating, came back home for the summer, worked at a plant nursery just to have something to do over the summer, then went back, and in August of 2000, the guy that I had done the marketing for, he was opening a brand new store in Trussville, Alabama. And so he told me, he's like, hey, I want you to come be a manager when I open the store. It's like, okay. Well, I didn't have any experience actually doing anything in the store. Mm-hmm. So I'd never made a chicken sandwich, never done any fries, never done anything. I was like, well, I haven't done that. He's like, I know. He said, but you're smart. You'll figure it out. He's like, I'll have you trained for 2 weeks before we open at another store in town. They'll teach you what you need to do. Then you come in, and everybody's going to think you've been here for years. It's like, okay. So that's what we did. So I trained for a couple weeks, worked like every single day a lot, learned everything there was to learn about the actual
doing of the job.
Right.
Right.
And then came in as the manager at the grand opening, and helped train those new employees because they knew even less than I did. I was basically 2 weeks ahead of them, but I was training them and showing them, okay, here's how this works. And then he was kind enough. He was awesome. Mark Nichols is his name. He still owns a couple Chick-fil-A's, or is the operator of a couple Chick-fil-A's. But he kind of guided me and groomed me he would then tell me, okay, well, you need to learn this because one day you'll be an operator of a store, and so you need to know this, this, and this. So he would kind of show me a couple things along the way every month or whatever, and teach me the ins and outs and how things worked.
So what does everybody think? Do they think you're going to flip burgers at McDonald's?
Some people thought that for sure. They're like, okay, you went to college, to a private school, it cost a pretty good amount of money, and you graduated, and now you're working at Chick-fil-A. I was like, yeah. And so a lot of people kind of were like, okay, well, that seems odd. And I didn't bother to explain to them, there's a lot more potential here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making fries all day. But, people are going to think what they're going to think.
So what was that guy's name again?
Mark Nichols.
So what role did he's guiding you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that'll be the theme of a lot of people in your life, is that there's certain people that just have that knack to bring you along and guide you. I mean, what would you say the role of him in your life was, certainly at the time as you're young and impressionable? I think that's a big difference between of certain personality types. That my guess is you weren't impressionable, you were teachable or coachable, and so some people just have that knack to coach. So what was his role in your future, in your life?
Well, he was huge. And before that, at the hockey team, Scott Myers was the general manager, and he was the same way. He saw potential in me and said, "Hey, I want to help you. I want to bring you along." And he and I still talk this day. Mark and I still talk every once in a while.
Do you think those guys just have it, or I'm using this term intentional a lot, but do you think they like sit down at night and figure out how, or they just wake up and they just naturally?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think, and Mark's done the same thing for a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of like a good football coach who trains up assistant coaches knowing they're going to leave, but he wants to groom them, and basically those are kind of his representatives. And then somebody knows, okay, this guy studied under Mark, he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And if Mark vouches for him, then clearly he's done something right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So he was super kind to me, and as you said, I was coachable because I went in knowing nothing, and so I was willing to learn everything, and I was cleaning and mopping floors and doing everything because I know that's part of the deal, but I didn't want to do that forever.
And he had a very clear need for a role, right? So without you, he can't apply any leverage. Like, he could do the job himself. He could make the chicken himself, but instead you have to figure out a way to bring people along at all levels and apply leverage.
Right.
So what is the Chick-fil-A story? How does that, I mean, you're not there anymore, so tell me what was the, the process there from your life's perspective, and also include, family and friends and people you meet along the way while you're kind of telling this.
Okay, so that was August of 2000, so I turned 22 then. Mm-hmm. And I was helping him run the store. I worked my way up to become the top manager was.
So you graduate college, but you're already in this process. So there was just a seamless. How did that feel? Did you feel good that, like, some friends were probably panicking because they hadn't solidified some of them graduated, didn't have anything.
Right.
And they have to choose, well, I'm going to go back home or actually flip burgers. Right. So you're making this transition, right? So you transition in, and then what?
Yeah, and then he, from day one, was guiding me. Okay, here's what we need to do, because he wanted me to be an operator, and I wanted to be an operator. Mm-hmm. And so that process was him a couple times a month saying, okay, here's what we need to do. He would write stuff down. He'd tell me, okay, we need to do this and this. You need to be proficient here. He said, now it can be a long process, but once you're in, as long as you're working hard, you're in for life. And so that was August of 2000. So I worked at the store. Mm-hmm. September 2001 rolls around, 9/11. Right before that, he got a phone call and said, hey, we heard that you nominated Chris to be what's called interim manager training at the home office in Atlanta, and we want him to come over. And so that was right at a year. I guess he felt like I was at the point where I could kind of take the next step to go interim manager training. You go in for a week. And they teach you, okay, well, you manage a store. That's great. But now to go from manager to operator, there's a million other things. And here's some of them. So I did that. That was right around September 11th because lots of flights were canceled. People were driving in when they were supposed to be flying in. I remember that.
To Atlanta?
Mm-hmm. And so I met some great people there in that training. I think this is kind of my natural thing. When I first go into a group like that, I kind of sit back and observe and look around, and there's other people who are more vocal, who speak up, who kind of take charge whether or not they should. And so for the first day or two, I was pretty quiet, just sort of watched. Kind of like when I go play poker sometimes, just sort of watch and observe for a little while. And then after a couple of days, I'm like, okay, well, now it's time. And so then they would ask some pretty tough questions that a lot of these people weren't familiar with because they hadn't had that grooming that Mark had given me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so they would want to contribute and really had a desire to, but they couldn't because they didn't know. And so then I would speak up, and they looked at me like, well, here's this quiet guy. Now all of a sudden he's got all the answers.
All of a sudden you become the accidental leader.
Right. And so through that week, I actually met some pretty influential people at Chick-Fil-A, which was nice as well. And kind of told them my story. They told me their story. And so I left thinking, okay, well, I made a good impression on these folks, and I did really well. There were some other people in there who are like, these guys are going to be good too. And then I went back to the store the next week. Mark's like, okay, well, I heard some good things. That's great. It could be 6 months from now. It could be 2 years from now. But when they have a position that they think is a match for you, they'll give me a call and we'll talk about it. I said, okay, that's cool. So I had no expectation for any sort of timeline. Okay, in a month or in 6 weeks or 6 months, whatever, they're going to call me and I'm going to go somewhere. I had no idea what would happen. So that was September. October, he got a phone call. They said, hey, we're ready. We got a spot for Chris. He's like, what? And I was the same thing. I was like, whoa. My wife at the time, Lindsay, had just taken a job doing something in Birmingham. I was like, okay, we got at least 6 months or a year before anything else happens. But they called within a month and said there's a store in Tampa at West Shore Plaza Mall, and they're building a brand new mall a mile down the road called International Plaza Mall, and there's going to be a Chick-fil-A in there. So the Chick-fil-A guy at this one is moving over here, and this one's going to be open. It was an interim position, so I was going to be given 3 or 4 months just to go manage it, see what I could do. With the expectation being, okay, well, after your 3 or 4 months are up, we may find somebody who we're going to put in there permanently. It could be, or it could be you. We don't know. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, well, that's cool.
So it's an interview.
Right.
It's
on the job.
It's a test out.
Interview. And so November, there was a lot that happened between those 2 points, but in November we moved down there to Tampa. Okay. From Birmingham to Tampa. And if you know anything about mall stores, retail, November, December is a pretty busy time. Mm-hmm. Same thing here at Obsessed Garage. And so it was being thrown into the fire because I went in, basically December 1st was my takeover day. But I was there. I went to the store like a week early just to kind of help. And so I was there for Black Friday and the week after, and it was insane. And so I ran that store December, January, February. And in February, they have what they call the Chick-fil-A Seminar, which is all the operators from all across the country congregate together in one place. Mm-hmm. I went to that. It was in Nashville that year. Met a bunch of other really neat folks. Had a good time there. But the whole time, in my mind, I had run the store pretty well. I got my P&Ls. I still have those printouts at home too, next to my receipt. But I got my P&Ls back. They were really good. It's easy when the volume's high to have good P&Ls. Yeah. But I did pretty well. I got rid of some employees who shouldn't have been there. I brought in some new employees who should have been there. But to me, that was the worst part. It was almost constant day to day managing employees. And
people showing up, not showing up, right? Who's going to be here tomorrow and who's going to be here 6 months from now?
Exactly right. And we mentioned this in our other video. When we've hired folks here at Obsessed Garage, it's a different thing. we're not hiring somebody to come in and do fries or to come in at 6 a.m. to do food prep. A lot of times those jobs, those people don't maybe take them as seriously, or it's just another job and they can get a new one tomorrow. And so the day-to-day grind of that just wore on me. And I would have to go in. I would be sitting in dinner with my wife and get a phone call, hey, we need you. Or I'd be at home trying to sleep in
Johnny
for once.
didn't show up,
Right.
so yeah, and
2 guys called out.
Yeah, and we called the other 2, and they said no,
Right.
they're not coming. So
And so-
you're coming.
So at that point, it's on me. So I did that, which had to be done. But I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this forever. And so I called Mark, talked to Mark. I talked to some other guys in the Birmingham area who I knew, who ran stores. They were kind of telling me, it's like anything else. It's super rough because that happens, and it doesn't end after 10 years. But after 10 years or however many years, you also have systems in place and you have managers in place, and you find people who are good who will stick with you for a while, and it gets easier as it goes. Like, well, I understand that, but I don't know about this. So I made the decision. I was done. I would stay until they needed me, until they could find somebody else. The fun part of that story is it was March. It's the end of February, early March, 2002. And I got a call from the guy, the consultant, who would be the one to make the decision on who got to run that store. His name was Mike Schisler. And so he and I had talked a bunch. He'd come into the store a couple times. He was happy with the way I was doing things. He knew Mark. He knew I had Mark's seal of approval, so that was a good thing as well. And he called me one day. He said, hey, I have some good news for you. I said, okay, that's awesome. Before all this, by the way, sorry, he called once before. I wasn't at the store, which was rare. And so he called me on my cell phone. He's like, hey, what's going on? This is the first time I've ever called you weren't at the store. I said, well, I had to go buy a suit because I was going to the home office to do an interview so I could be an operator one day. But I didn't have a suit or a jacket or anything, so I had to go get a suit. He thought that was pretty funny. So he called and said, hey, I have good news for you. I was like, okay, well, I have some news for you too, but you go first. And he said, okay. He said, well, after talking it over and after talking to you and your interview and blah, 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 we're really excited. We'd love to have you stay on and become the operator of Chick-Fil-A West Shore Plaza. It's like, oh, this is flattering because I was, excuse me, at that point I'm 23 years old, and this store's $1 million store. Probably did 1.2 million that year, which is a pretty good for a mall store. And the income would have been pretty significant during some of the months anyway. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, Mike, but I have some bad news for you. So I told him, what I was thinking. We'd already had this talk before. I had shared my concerns with him. So he kind of knew some of that, but he didn't know the decision was final until then. So, of course, he said, we're super sorry to hear that, but understand completely. Would you be willing to stay on until we could find somebody else? I said, oh, definitely. I won't go anywhere. I'll stay here as long as you need. But take your time and find the right person. So they found the right person, and I ended things on March 31st, and then moved up back to Ocala on April 1st, actually, of 2002.
With a job?
No job.
So what was the plan?
That's a good question. I didn't have a plan.
You didn't have any time, right?
Right.
There's no time to make a plan. You
Right.
just know that this will be never ending unless I just shut it down.
Yeah, and I didn't know how long it was going to take them to find somebody, and they found somebody pretty quick, which is good. But at the same time, I was like, I thought I maybe had more time to line something up when I went back to Ocala.
So you go back to Ocala. What's the next? And then what's next?
Well, I still have family, friends, know a ton of people there, and just called my buddy who ran the nursery where I'd worked a couple times before and done lawn care and stuff for him. Said, hey, you got any spots? He's like, always, come on. So I did that briefly until then I got my real estate license because I thought I was going to be a real estate agent.
Okay. I can't see that one.
No, I still have a business card I should give you. And I was wearing my suit that I had.
It's your one suit.
One suit. So I got that, tried that for a while, didn't enjoy that. That didn't work out very well. Ended up having a conversation with a friend of mine who knew someone who is the principal at Osceola Middle School. Her name was Jane Elsperman, and she needed someone to be a mentor at Osceola Middle School, which is where I went to middle school. So I said, that sounds like a fun job. So I went, talked to her, and she said, okay, we'd love to have you. She kind of asked me about my background and what I did, and if I would be interested in teaching one day, which I'd never, ever, ever considered. I said, well, maybe one day, who knows? So I did the mentor thing through the end of that year. That started in November of 02, went through 03. At the end of that year, she said, hey, I'm going to be principal at Westport Middle School next year, and I need some math teachers. Would you like to come teach math? And at that point, I had already accepted a position at Redeemer Christian School to teach Algebra 1 and coach PE. So I did that for a year, and then because the salary was not meeting it, and they didn't have any benefits at a private school either for teachers, so that was not going to work. So talked to Jane again. She said, I'd love to have you. So then I started working at Westport Middle School in the 04-05 school year as a math teacher. So that was next.
So why teaching? I mean, did you just because you fell into it? Were you thinking about this possibility? You mentioned you never thought you'd be a teacher, but after mentoring, did you enjoy that process so much of going to school at school hours and dealing with kids and smacking some around and then coaching some up to become that mentor? Was that what was the motivation?
Yeah, the mentorship thing was basically kind of like an internship and being able to see how things worked. And I liked the kids. At that time, I still liked middle school aged students. I don't anymore. They're terrible. But I like that age group. I was pretty good at math, and I had a way. I was also doing a little tutoring on the side at the time, and also liked that I could explain it well. A lot of times you get people who are super bright, but they're not really good at taking that knowledge and helping someone else understand it. That can be pretty tough. But I had a gift for doing that.
So that was the motivating, that was the drug, that was the exciting part of the gig, was to be able to see someone's light bulb turn on.
Exactly.
While you're crafting wording to attempt to teach somebody how it works. I mean, that's kind of my drug with with this weird crap that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Is it's so much fun to break something down in a way that people can, then eventually, in your case, get a good grade, or in my case would be somebody buy something.
Right.
So now you're teaching, and what's the intentionality there? Are you going to be a teacher for the rest of your life? What are you thinking as you're in your early 20s?
Well, here's where I'm fortunate again, because I started teaching. Jane brought me on at Westport Middle, and Jane had that same spirit, that same gift that Mark and Scott had, and that she loved developing leaders and saying, okay, you have potential, and if you're interested, I'd be glad to show you how to get here and here and here, and here are the steps it would take. And so she took that genuine interest in me and saw my potential and saw, hey, if you really wanted to, you could do this. And so again, I had someone who was like, hey, if you want to go, I'll show you the way. So I was like, okay. And so I taught 1 year at the middle school. I started teaching the second year at the middle school. It shared a campus at the time with a high school. She then became principal at the middle and the high school. And there was a teacher on the high school side who taught AP Calc, Pre-Cal, and then it was sort of a remedial math class for students who had failed a standardized test to go back and get some more learning. Well, he was a super bright guy, MIT graduate, engineer for years and years. But when he had retired, and he enjoyed the calculus and the pre-cal, I think, but then there were 4 classes of those other students, and he did not enjoy that at all. And he was even struggling with the pre-cal and cal students, just connecting with them, because he was 60-something, and they were 16, 17, 18. So he walked out one day and just didn't come back. He's like, I'm out. I don't need this. He's probably living in the villages right now. And so Jane, the next day, said, hey, we have an opening over here. You're qualified to teach it, because I was certified 6th through 6th grade through 12th grade. It's like, and we only have 2 teachers on the high school side who are certified to teach it, and they don't want to teach it. Like, okay. So then I moved from the middle school side over to the high school side, and started teaching pre-cal, calculus, and that remedial math class.
So what did you have to do on weekends? You wake up, the first time you teach a course, you have to prepare yourself. Like some of the stuff you'd forgotten how to do.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, I'd been teaching 6th, 7th, or 7th, 8th grade in algebra, which was a breeze. I mean,
A plus B
easy,
equals C. Right.
Anybody can do well. Most people could do that. So then when I said yes before I even really thought, it's been a while since I've taken calculus.
You have to remind yourself how to do a limit. What does that mean?
Right.
How do I do a integral versus a differential? Right. I'd have to, if I had to do that right now, I'd have to go back to school before it.
So that's exactly what I did. There would be nights where I'd sit in my recliner at home doing the next day's lesson, going through it, and saying, "Okay, I got this. I could," because I'd done it. It'd just been at that point
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years or so. And so I was basically a day or two ahead of them for the first year. After that, I was good because I had done it all again. I was good to go. But it was. It's
funny when you're a kid, you think your teacher has it all together, that they know everything. When they're half the time, probably an hour before the class, you're figuring out what the heck they're teaching.
And I was fortunate because I had a super good pre-cal and calculus teacher. Algebra 2, I had a crappy teacher, and hopefully she's not watching this. Won't name any names, but she was terrible. And I only learned that later, because when I went to go teach Algebra 2, I was looking through it going, man, I never learned any of this the right way.
Yeah.
So then I had to teach myself that because she never did. So I was there in that process. Then that's when I started going to grad school. I had my computer science degree. I took the test. I needed to be math certified 6 through 12, which were a breeze. And then she said, well, if you want to move into administration within education, you need to get an educational leadership degree. So I said, okay. So then I started at University of Florida. And so 2 or 3 nights a week, depending on the semester, I would leave school, race the buses out of the parking lot, and get on the road to go to Gainesville so that I could take classes at night. So I did that for 2 years.
How does any teacher do that? It doesn't. You make like $3,000 more to go and become, master's or PhD. It's just such a flawed system. And so many do it. Why in the world would you do it?
Well, there are 2 bad things there. One, if I got my master's and I just stayed in the classroom, you're right. It would have been $3,000 a year. It would take who knows how many years to get your ROI, get your money back. And even then, was it worth all the time you gave up to be away at night for all those times?
Yeah, for 2.5 years or whatever it takes.
Yeah. The other thing then is that if you're a good teacher, and this is one of the kind of the catch-22s that I still, with education, I have an issue. If you're a good teacher, then, okay, they say, hey, you're a great teacher. Why don't we move you out of the classroom and bring you up to be an assistant principal or work at the district office like I did later? It's like, if you go back and look at the teachers of the year in Marion County, how many of them are actually still teaching? Very, very few. Which
is what they're gifted to do, what they should be doing,
right,
and what they should be compensated to do.
But then if you're teaching, you're making, let's say, $38,000 a year. Congratulations, you're teacher of the year. Next year you make $38,500. Or you can come work at the administrative level, or you can be an assistant principal and make double that.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, if you're smart enough, you're like, well, I like teaching. I enjoy that process. And then what I then tell myself when I moved to the district office was, okay, well, now I'm still kind of a teacher. I'm just teaching teachers, and therefore, in theory, I'm having an influence on more students. Because if I can help all these teachers to be better at this, then they can help all their students be better. So that kind of makes sense, but you still miss that interaction of the kids day to day too. So it's kind of screwed up.
So then you go into a sort of an admin type role. What happens next?
All right. So got my master's. That would have been, I graduated in 2007 from UF, and kept teaching for another couple years. And then every summer, some teachers take time during the summer to take time off, but there's also a ton of enrichment activities or learning experiences or professional development going on during the summer. And so I had an interest and a desire for more money, and I said, okay, well, if I go during the summer and help write curriculum maps and develop curriculum and choose new textbooks and be on committees for that, I can make a little extra money. And through that process, then the people who are in those positions at the district office say, oh, this guy's been here and we really like the way he does this. He's a bright guy. And so I met people there who took an interest in me and said, okay, well, we'd like to have you here in some role at some point. So then my next move was 2010 was my last year teaching, the 09-10 school year. And then I moved to the district office to be the math program specialist for secondary education. So middle schools and high schools. I was kind of in charge of the curriculum. When the textbook adoption rolled around, I did that. I would gather teacher committees over the summer, kind of like the ones that I had been on. I would put those together. And then during the school year, I would help go to every single school and say, hey, let me meet with your teachers on a Wednesday morning or whatever, and we're going to talk about how best we can do this or what needs to change in our county documents we're putting out, maybe because they're the ones actually doing this. You guys tell me what's good, what's bad, where do we need to improve.
Why do they keep freaking change? Math has been the same for 200 years or 2,000 years.
A million years, yeah.
Why does anything need to change ever? Pick one best way to do it and get really good at it. Like, let me go run the freaking school system. Why do they change it? Every bunch of wishy-washy people changing crap. Whoever makes that decision probably also, doesn't know how to like do anything organized in their life.
That's the other frustration that comes up is you realize at some point all this comes down from the state level. And it's not even the state education people who are making these decisions. It's the state legislature who are making some decisions.
Right.
A bunch of cranky old white guys sitting around.
Hey, we need to
like
change
we'll be
this.
one day. And they say, hey, we need to change this, this needs to change. And they've never been in school. They don't know anything.
Right.
And they have to worry about a million other things besides education.
Yeah.
With all the stupid amendments we have in Florida. So they've got all that to worry about, and they decide to change it.
It's freaking dumb. This is why, I was thinking about this. I'm like, man, if I was a teacher today, this is the perfect opportunity to do it. Just leave, start a school with 5 rich families, charge them $10,000 a year, and have each has, let's say you have 10 kids. You could go rent yourself a little out parcel somewhere, make it look real cool. Put a basketball hoop in, you make $200,000, and have these awesome, develop all these future leaders. It'd be amazing.
Start a charter school tomorrow if you want it.
Yeah, it'd be so easy. That's what you should do instead of dealing with all these goofballs telling you how to do it. You just get the parents to sign off and buy in and say, I'm not going to stick with your system. I'm going to build my own system. I'm sure you could probably talk me into sending my kids there. So okay, so now, so you leave the classroom. Now you're in administration. What about your regular life during this process of your 20s and early 30s? I mean, what are you doing? What are you into?
That's a great question. So let's see. 20s when I was working all through Chick-Fil-A. That was mostly work. I was married at the time. We had Caroline in 2006, December 23rd, 2006. So she's now 13, which is crazy. And then got divorced. So Caroline's mom got remarried. She moved to Orlando in 2010, which that kind of put a whole strain because I was in Ocala. Mm-hmm. She was in Orlando. And so I would get her every other weekend, and I'd make trips down to have date nights with her, and trying to make that schedule work. So that was an added kind of stress on all the other stuff that was going on, which made things difficult. We've come a long way. We make things work. So that's all good. But that was definitely a rough patch where all of that stuff happened, which didn't help. It may have helped me focus a little more on the work I was doing because I'd come home at night and there's nobody there. So I'm like, okay, well, what else am I going to do? I'll do some more work. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have those, not that they were a distraction before, but they weren't, when they're not there, it's like, okay, well, now there are 0 distractions. I have no excuses. Mm-hmm. So I probably dove a little bit deeper into work, but I also had some really good friends at the time. Developed friendships at work that were great. Kind of a cross-section of humanity when you get a bunch of high school teachers, some of whom are interested in the arts, some of whom are math teachers, but all pretty cool people.
All go to Kohl's.
I did not go to Kohl's, but a lot of them did.
All right. Kohl's Bucks are not your thing?
No, I don't like Kohl's.
I just make fun of because my wife's sister's like the teacher's teacher. And so they love all those teachers love Kohl's.
Well, here's a quick story for you about. So I was a high school teacher, and here I think we talked about this briefly. Elementary school teachers, a lot of them, that's why they went to college. They major in elementary education. So they come out, they want to be an elementary school teacher. That's their deal. They've known it since they were 5, some of them.
Yeah.
Middle school teachers are kind of a mishmash. Some of them knew they wanted to be a teacher, but there's UF isn't putting out a lot of middle school teacher degrees.
Right.
And they're putting out 0 high school teacher degrees. High school teachers are this whole cross-section who has done a million different things, but none of them went to school to be a high school teacher, because there's no, I mean, they may have a math education degree if they're super nerd, but for the most part, they've all done other things. They didn't know they wanted to teach, kind of like me. And so during the summer, it's interesting because all these elementary school teachers, they eat up that professional development. They love going and doing all that stuff. All the classes fill up quickly. High school teachers are like off to hike Appalachian Trail. They're going out west to visit Montana, going out on the Keys, lay on the beach for a couple months maybe. A lot of high school teachers didn't come into it straight out of straight out of college in order to teach. So it's very, very different, kind of the personalities there between those two types. My wife, Megan, is in elementary education, and she's not quite wearing like the letter sweaters and stuff and that sort of thing. When she was in the classroom, she was a great elementary school teacher, which I could never be. And she would never want to be a high school teacher. So it's interesting that any kindergarten teacher would never want to teach high school, and most high school teachers never want to teach kindergarten.
Yeah, I could see that.
Very, very different.
So now you're in Ocala. You're how long are you in administration?
So I was Marion County Public Schools from 2010 until 2014. That's where Megan, my wife, and I met. She was a elementary school teacher. She came to work in a role at the county office, and I was there. So that's how we met, which was awesome. Good timing. And then 2014, June of 2014, I was done at the district office. Back in, I think it was probably February, I was sitting in a meeting with assistant principals and principals, which in theory is where I wanted to go, be an assistant principal. And I was looking around the room and listening to everything they had to do and all these worries they had and all the mandates coming down. And, oh yeah, by the way, you have to do this, and we're cutting the budget, and all of you have a teacher shortage. And I was like, okay. I made the decision, and like I smiled. It was odd. I just smiled because I was like, I'm done. I won't be doing this either.
So it's a lot like the Chick-Fil-A transition.
Yeah, and it hit me, and in that second, I was like, okay, I'll be here a little bit longer, but then I'm out.
It's kind of like when the relationship's over,
right?
And there's nothing that could happen to, rekindle that.
Correct. And money's great and all, but it's
like me in cars. When the GT350 is dead to me, it's gone.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that can happen.
Yeah. So that was probably February or March. And then I let my supervisor know about a couple months out. It's like, I'm out. And
no plan again?
No plan. And I kind of had a plan. I had applied to work at Florida Virtual School.
Okay.
But they have this incredibly long process of hiring and bringing people in. But I started that process. But by the time when my end date came around, the Florida Virtual position wasn't open.
So why Florida Virtual School? Why did you make that move?
The biggest thing was the schedule. Florida Virtual, basically, you can teach. I taught high school math, among other things, and I'm working from home. I create my own schedule. I tell kids, okay, here are your options for when we can talk or when we can do our lessons. It can be when I'm driving in the car from Ocala to Orlando to go see Caroline. It could be when I'm sitting at one of her softball practices. It could be when Megan and I leave she took off Friday, so we're driving up to go see her family, and I'm on the phone the whole way up there to take care of all my Friday work. And so that freedom, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because you can work from anywhere at any time, which means you work from anywhere at any time.
It goes with you everywhere, right?
And so, I mean, there's good and bad to both sides of that. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed parts of it, and then I tried to go the administrator route. I applied to be an instructional leader there, which is their version of a principal. Had an interview for that. Thought it went well, but it didn't, I guess. And chatted with my instructional leader. And again, I had a couple people there who were kind of bringing me up and were helping me there, and chatted with them about it and like, what's the deal? And had that conversation of, okay, well, this has to happen, and sometimes you have to do this and this. And I was like, okay, well, that's good. This was 3 years into it. This is not from the beginning. But I definitely enjoyed parts of it, but it also got to the point where they were overwhelming the teachers. I would have up to about 250 students at a time, which is a lot when you have to make contact with every single parent at least once a month, and have that contact with students. So I enjoyed it, but then I also decided at some point, okay, well, I'm not going to be here forever. And so that's when, and we've talked about this before, joked about this, it was April 1st, 2017 was the start of our first weight loss challenge. And so I had gone to Caroline's softball game that day down in Lake Mary. We came back up. I stopped and ate a couple double quarter pounders with cheese on the way at the McDonald's right there in Lake Mary. And then we came to your house, and you had just had the first $100,000 sales month at OG in March of 2017. So you were all excited. It's like, man, that's crazy. Because you and I had known each other since 2012-ish. And I'd kind of watched this grow and watched the videos and kept up with you. That's another great thing about Florida Virtuals. I could watch you and Doug DeMuro all day while I'm doing my work. And so you and I had a conversation, and we were chatting about something else. You're like, okay, well, one day I'm going to hire you away. I was like, all right, you just tell me when. He said, well, it'll be about 18 months. That was April 1st, 2017. So that was kind of also while I was teaching at Florida Virtual, I was like, okay, well, I can do this. I enjoy it. It has its ups and downs. I'm not going to be here forever. But maybe one day that will work out with Matt and what he's doing. And in the midst of that, Megan and I got married in 2016, October 30th. We, for both of us, it was our second marriage, and we didn't want a big ceremony. We didn't want a big anything. As soon as we got engaged, I went and got a marriage license, which means then we had 90 days to get it done. And so we're like, we're just going to do it. We're not going to tell our families. We're not telling anybody. We don't know the plan yet. We're just going to do it, which that was pretty fun. We didn't even tell Caroline until the day of, which that was not such a good idea. Sorry, Caroline. And so she found out when she was going to get her hair done what the hair was being done for.
Yeah, I remember, Michelle, I'm like, who's this girl that Chris just married? I'm like, I never even know who this girl is. What the heck's going on here?
Yeah, we had been together for like 2 years at that point. So.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah. So yeah, that was fun because we got married on the front porch of our friend's house in Micanopy. Fro and Lori Warren.
That sounds real fancy.
Yeah, it was a 2-minute wedding, and here's the best part. So we have the wedding. A very small group of friends who we tailgate with for the Florida football games. Right. They came because we had talked about it. That's where the whole thing came up, as a tailgating. So afterwards, we walk. It's at the Micanopy Fall Festival. So it's like a little festival they have, and there's all these vendors set up. So we're walking down the one little main road there in Micanopy. We stop, and I looked up, and I was like, is that your dad? Talking to Megan, because as soon as it was over, we called our parents. Yeah. So my mom didn't answer her phone. I called her first, for the record. Yeah. And she didn't answer her phone. So then I called my dad. He picked up his phone, which was odd because it was on a Sunday, and he was at church, but he happened to be walking in the hallway. So I told him. She called her mom. She called her dad. He didn't answer. So we were walking down the road. It's like, is that your dad right there? I said, yeah, that's my dad. So he just happened to be there at the same time, same day. So we saw him and his wife. They bought us arepas from the arepa truck. That was our reception. And I went back down and took some pictures. But we didn't know they were going to be there. They didn't know we were going to be there. They didn't know we were getting married. It was interesting. So yeah, we've been happily married now for, 3.5 years? Almost 4 years.
So let's tell your version of the Obsessed Garage story as you see it from your, how long have you been here now?
It'll be 2 years and 1 month from today.
Okay. So tell your story of this. Everybody's heard my version of it. So tell your story of the 2 years ago and taking that leap and where we are and getting us to where we're at.
Yeah, by the way, if you're still watching, God bless you, because I'm bored.
Come on, Chris, you're doing great.
I can't even believe anybody.
It's only been an hour.
You want to listen to me for this long?
I could talk for 3 hours. Yeah.
All right, so Matt and I met at the gym, CrossFit Pinnacle up in Ocala in 2012ish. That's when I started April.
So what was your impression of, I didn't talk to a lot of people. There's only certain people that it's not that I just, it doesn't even occur to me.
Right.
And so, but then when there's certain people that I like, then, so what was your impression of the, of me, when I come in and we're because I think I was a member before you were, but you knew all the people there. You grew up with all these people. So I was, one of the few outsiders in Ocala, in this town that's coming in, and I was eaten up with CrossFit crazy, you know.
So, well, the biggest thing, and Michelle will appreciate this. So I'd been going for a couple months. I'd go about the same time every day, but it could vary. But at 4:30 or 5:30 or 6:30, I think, or maybe 4, 5, 6. They were competitive because there was like you and Justin, and
then you had Joey.
Yeah.
Joey would work on the morning, but you'd have Nick, and you'd have Matt Winters and Chris Yancey, and
right.
You'd have this whole Alex Cavan. There were dozens of people.
Eric and Jamie, who I saw this weekend at Bacon Beat Down, they were there then.
Yeah. So you had the coaching contingent, and then you had Brad Gerald and Tim Shocker. Tim wasn't there yet, but you had and so you had like the coaches. And then you had like the upper level wannabes, like me and Green, and Brad,
right.
And then you had like that. Then you had the Chad O'Coles and the the other sort of that contingent of the guys who weren't quite as crazy as Brian Hentz and all of those guys.
Right.
You were kind of in that crew,
right? Yeah, I wasn't nearly as competitive, but I enjoyed seeing the competition. It would give me, I would want to be competitive, but I just couldn't be. And so,
wrong body type.
Yeah, that's what I found. That's kind of what first drew me to you. Is I realized after the first month or so, it's like, this isn't for tall people.
Yeah,
it's just not. And I'm kind of tall. And so then I saw you, and you weren't that much shorter than me. And I was like, oh, well, he's doing pretty good. So maybe I just need to do what he's doing. But I didn't know you, didn't talk to you. But Michelle, the few interactions I had with her, she was like always super nice and like outgoing, and oh, you did so awesome, and just the nicest girl ever at the gym. And I'm like, how in the world are those two together? It's like, she's like the nicest ever. She's so building everybody up and like high-fiving everybody and cheering people on at the end. And he goes around and does his workout and like gets angry at himself and hides in the corner afterwards. It's like, how does that work? And so that's why I was like, wow, okay. He's like, well, Michelle's cool. I don't know about him. So then we chatted maybe a couple times, but there was one time I remember in particular sitting down at Rex Rumble. Did that competition. It may have been 13.
Oh, yeah. That's like one of the only competitions I've ever done.
But we had a tent set up, and you sat in our tent, and you had just ordered the whatever that 911 was, the white one.
Yeah, the Carrera S. Yeah.
So you're like tracking it on your phone. I asked what you were doing. You're like, oh, the ship's on the ocean and it's got my Porsche on it. I was like, oh, okay. And so then we were talking about that. And you told me you had gotten Michelle flowers, and all it said on the card was 9.
I told you my foolproof plan for overcoming objections.
Get the okay for the car. But we spent a good deal of time talking that day, and then I knew. Okay, well, at this point, if he can afford that car, then he's doing something where he's making a pretty good income. And so a couple weeks later, we were at the gym, and we sat down afterwards. I came and sat next to you and asked you, do you enjoy your job? And you're like,
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I didn't enjoy the process of getting here, but it's okay now, and I like it now.
At that point, I was a huge champion for the career choice. And I was trying to recruit everybody. Like, you've got to do this. This is so great. Now I would say otherwise, but
yeah, that was like 2014-ish, maybe 2015. I don't remember.
Yeah, that would have been, so Rex Rumble would have been 14 or 13 or 14 because I won that competition and it just annihilated everybody. There was like 35 guys or something. It just so happened that it worked out that it was the only other competition I've done, like the first workout is Diane. Freaking screwed, and there's no coming back from that. But this was like cleans
built
and
for you.
like carrying. It was like farmer's carry. I beat everybody by a minute. It was amazing. That was the most fun I ever had.
Yeah, I remember the farmer's carry workout. That was long.
Yeah. Well, everybody's walking with it and set it down. I just went on a flat. I'm like, why does anybody running? I just waited and watched everybody do it. And I just went on a flat sprint. just flat out sprint. It was a piece of cake. Yeah. Anyway, so then keep going with
all right. So at some point, whenever it was, you started the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And that would have been what, 2016?
I started 2014. So I started in the end of 14.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because the end of 14 is when I started working at Florida Virtual School, December 1st, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And so as part of my daily ritual, I'd get up, I'd go to the gym in the mornings, I'd come home because most of my students were in school in the morning, so I couldn't contact them. I had a very light schedule in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so the homeschool students and other students who may be traveling, I would work with them. But I would watch, once your video starts, like, oh, I'll see what he's doing. So I'd watch the video, whatever video you were putting out, I'd watch it. Megan and I were joking the other night. I was like, I'm one of the very few people on earth who can say I've seen every single video, because I was watching then, I watch them all now in the mornings here. I don't watch them so much anymore.
But
I just listen to them.
You'd watch it more as background for not so much the car stuff, more the bull crap in between. Right? Yeah.
It's like, what is he doing? And I remember Justin telling me, because you and Justin and Nick were doing your whatever those races were, wilderness challenge things,
adventure racing.
Yeah. And so Justin, I think, may have told me about it first. He's like, he's videoing himself washing his car. People are watching it. I was like, what? So I was like, okay, well, I'll watch. So then I started watching, and I just watched because it was you and because I knew you. I didn't care so much about the other stuff.
Right.
And it was actually probably a little before this, actually. Michelle still likes to tell this story. This is probably 2013 when you had your...
M3?
No, it was the S4. S4, yeah. And you were going to take the exhaust off because you were selling it. And so you put out a Facebook post that day like, hey, does anybody want to come help me? I'm taking the exhaust off or something. And so you still live down here, so it's still like a 35-minute drive from where I was. So I was like, well, I got nothing to do today. So I was like, well, I don't know anything about cars, but I'll come help.
Yeah.
And so I came down and helped you. We had to like dig the other one out from under the house, I think. You had to turn a certain way to come out of there.
Yeah.
And Michelle got us public subs and cookies. I remember that. And so now she'll tell people, he put out the word on Facebook, and Chris was the only person who came to help him that day. It's like nobody else came. And now he just puts stuff out, and people will fly in from all over the country to come help him.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So I came back a couple other times, like when you're getting the audio done. The guy from Boston came down.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, we went to lunch with him that day. And I come over just for little other things that come up just when I had time. And
you came down like when we did one of my first live streams of me trying to figure out bottles, and you kind of helped me keep it all straight. And that's around the time I started saying, dude, I'm gonna do big things here. I'm gonna hire you. I don't know that I really believed it.
Yeah. Ted was there that night too, actually. He was helping on the bottle night.
Yeah.
And so, and throughout this process, there were the summer of 17, we had the weight loss challenge.
Yeah.
The summer of 18, we did it again. And so we were kind of going back and forth. Then we'd spend some time talking to each other. And then what I would also do, I don't know if you remember, when I was working at Florida Virtual on Wednesday mornings, I usually send you an email. I just said, hey, here's some thoughts I had. Because it would just hit me in the shower or at the gym or whatever. Like, you have this package. Why not have this package? Or I think you could do this, or maybe this needs to be, just kind of giving you, hey, suggestions, basically. It was kind of the Brian deal before Brian deal. Hey, Brian. And so I think that may have helped a little bit in you saying, okay, well, this guy, he clearly cares about it, and he wants to be involved and helping. But yeah, in 2017 is when you told me, I'm going to hire you away and it'll be 18 months. And I was like, okay, well, that could maybe work. But then in 18, as things started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I could see the growth. I could see the growth of the channel. And I saw when the moderators came down, or whoever that group was that did the detail on the S2000 and the Raptor. And I came over there for some of that and met them. And at that time, I was thinking, okay, well, this maybe has some legs, and this might really turn into something. So then in 2018... it was early August when you called me and said, hey, are you ready to come
Yeah,
work with
because
me.
2 months prior to that, I thought I was going to have to sell my house and just start trying to figure out how to do this. I thought I'd be stuffing envelopes myself and fixing, filling boxes and just kind of trying to video that process. And then very quickly, I realized that I needed somebody to take the weight off of me, which was a significant amount of questions and stuff. So you come in. So tell me about the change, or tell me about the evolution of where we started and where we are.
Okay, so well, your timing was good because of the day you called. I was especially frustrated with Florida Virtual at the time, and so I didn't even think. I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And Megan came home later. She's like, "What?" She's like, "Did you ask him about insurance or benefits?" No. Did you ask him about this? No. Ask about this? No. It's like, well, okay. And so that was early August, and so I called my instructional leader at Florida Virtual, said, "Hey," and I'd already expressed a little bit to her, I'm getting frustrated and I'm not going to be around forever. So I called her and said, "Hey, I got some bad news." And she asked me, she's like, "Well, okay, well, what are you going to go do?" I said I was going to help a friend of mine who's kind of just starting this small business. She's like, "Oh, okay, that sounds like fun." She's like, "Well, can you give me 2 weeks?" I said, "Yeah, that's kind of the deal." I told him it'd be 2 weeks. Like, "Well, can you give me a month?" It's like, "No, I can't give you a month." So I worked 2 more weeks. My first day at Obsessed Garage was my birthday, my 40th birthday, August 27th, 2018.
I'm sure I had a big party for you.
No,
right?
you weren't even here that day. You were traveling
Where the
somewhere.
heck was I? Yeah.
It was me and your parents.
Yeah.
And then Ted came in like in the afternoon, I think.
Yeah. So Ted wasn't he still a garbage man in the morning, and he'd come in the afternoon?
Yeah, he'd work like 6 to 2 or whatever doing the garbage route, and then come in the afternoons.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Ted was employee 1. You were employee 2. If you don't count me and my parents as
right. And Michelle, technically, she was.
Michelle was helping
doing
a lot then. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was August 27th, 2018. And before it was all official, we had a phone call. You're like, "Hey, I want to have you on this Zoom call with my coach, Rick." So that's the first time I had any interaction with Rick, was before I started. And so at the beginning, it was just, "Okay, well, I need you to take email off my plate, number one, because you were getting lots and lots and lots of emails." And basically, I saw my role at the beginning is my job is to free up Matt and take stuff off of his plate so he can do all this other stuff. And I don't know what all that entails. It could be emails, and then it turned into a lot more. It was funny. The first thing that let me know I was in for something different was I had my I-9 and my W-4. I had it filled out, so I brought them in, and when you came in that next day, I handed them to you, and you're like, "Okay." And you looked at them, and you turn around and hand them back to me. You're like, "Here, you figured out you're that new head of HR," or something like that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I was like, you figure out how to get yourself insured as well while you're at it. And you figure that out too.
Yeah, and how to make sure you get paid. I was like, okay. So that was the beginning. Basically,
how did I do payroll?
It was all through QuickBooks at the time.
Yeah, but how did I do that? Oh, we had Jill.
Yeah,
that's right.
She was doing the books.
So we had a bookkeeper that was, gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Well, it's changed.
Oh my word. Yeah, it does for me, because you had to fire her, and you had to figure out getting people hired, and you had to figure out how to write the handbook and all of that stuff. Rather than, so I feel so detached from it.
Yeah.
And so that's been a huge, one relief to me, but also a huge thing for me to do. I don't even know if are you paying the sales tax and all that? I don't even know.
Yes, I do that.
So I'm freaking screwed. If
if I get run over by a bus tomorrow.
If you'd make one of these days where you decide, when I'm done, I'm freaking screwed. I don't have a backup plan.
No, you'll be happy to know I have a whole folder full of documents on how-tos I created.
Got it.
So anybody could pay sales tax now.
So now, where do you think you're going? Where do you think, we talked about this in the previous video. One of the things I want people to do is to start to craft a future, and we have the opportunity in building this organization from scratch to, again, not to every day we wake up and do exactly what we want to do, but why not work our way toward, if there's a profitable entity inside the organization that people can fill a role that they would like to do rather than not like to do, why would we have a bunch of people doing what they not like to do? Now there may be an ascent to that, and as it gets bigger and jobs get narrower, there are going to be people that come in to pack boxes before they get to do what they want to do. But what do you see? Where you want to kind of cue people on where we're headed next. But what is your vision for the next, let's say, 5 years?
Well, it's gotten easier. And first of all, I'm not running OG Canada, so don't ask. Canadians. But it has gotten easier, even in the last 6 months, because it is narrowing. Like in the very beginning, in addition to all that stuff and to building up SKU labs and all the kits and kind of building the back end of all that stuff, it was, okay, well, now the UPS truck's here, so me and your dad are loading the truck. Mm-hmm. And, okay, well, now the garbage needs to be taken out and all these boxes need to be taken out, so we do that. And so at the very beginning, it was almost literally everything, doing everything, which I'm fine with. But like you said, I don't get up looking forward to hauling boxes to the dumpster in August in Florida. Mm-hmm. And so, but now as we've grown, and we kind of joke about it now, like when the UPS trucks get here, I got a big smile on my face. I'm like, I don't have to do that anymore. Now that's somebody else's job. And then one day they won't have to do it. Now Ted, our buddy Kyle, who drives the UPS truck for us, if he's here, I'll go grab the smallest box I can find and take it out to him and hand it to him. And he's like, you too good for this work now? I was like, yes, I am. I can't do that anymore. And now Ted's gotten the same way. He and your dad are kind of now over there doing their thing, and now we've got other folks who can handle that part of it. So now he'll go grab a little box too and give it to Kyle, which is always fun. But now as like the big thing that was then taken off my plate was Kyle and technical support. Mm-hmm. And so all those emails that you got, now those go to him. So I don't have to worry about that. That was a huge thing for me at the beginning, especially because I didn't have nearly the product knowledge that Kyle does. And so that's something that I don't have to worry about anymore. And Kyle, the best part is now Kyle took it and he made it awesome, and it's getting more awesome every day, more awesome than I would have made it, because I just couldn't and didn't have the time. And now Aaron has come in and he's taken over that shipping. And there's stuff, I did a lot of shipping in the past when we were busy. There's stuff I wanted to do but just couldn't, because if there ever was a break in shipping, I have to come in here and pay the sales tax or file our federal taxes or balance the books or whatever. And so now he's got that, and he comes in and he brings me stuff. And it's like, man, that's a great idea. Do it. And so now I don't have to worry about that. And so as we keep growing and keep narrowing and finding other people to take stuff and run with it, that's been the favorite part for me to watch, is for somebody to take that and run with it. So that now I can focus on all the stuff that comes up day to day that I would just, that would be the last thing on my plate at the end of the day. Now I can focus on it. So going forward, as we continue to grow and bring in more people and have more opportunity for those people to take their stuff and run with it, I find myself asking, okay, well, what's my super niche? If I could, because one day I imagine we'll have a dedicated HR person, and I don't have to worry about that anymore, which would be awesome, because I don't want to worry about that. And we might have a whole accounting department like some of our suppliers we deal with. And I've developed relationships with all those people that we work with, and they could be the one person that could be their 12th job too where they're working. I don't know. That's the interesting part. But I just like being able to, a lot of what I got from Scott and from Mark and from Jane and from Mike Doobie at Florida Virtual, who kind of took me under his wing, is being able to, the best word I guess is empower our employees and say, here's your job. If you need help or any questions or you need help making a decision, come let me know. Kyle will come ask me even this morning about something we worked on it. But I also want to empower those people to say, listen, this is now your baby. And at some point, you're going to know the answer better than I do. Same thing with you, where you are now. You don't even know if we pay our sales tax or what people or is payroll coming out this week? I don't know. It could be next week. That stuff just all gets done now because I took that and I ran with it. That's my thing now. And I'm doing all this stuff with that so that you don't have to worry about it. And so, I don't know, 3, 5, 7 years from now, I imagine we'll be even bigger. And I'd want to be in a position where I can help develop people and be in a leadership role to be able to empower them and help them, while at the same time not getting too far removed, because I still like going out there. I still like going over and seeing what you guys are doing over on the media side. I like every once in a while pulling the easiest order I can find, maybe shipping a couple boxes. I like having my hands in it still, because once I get removed, I've found that out since we've got Aaron. Now there's things that I don't get to see every day because I'm not out there so much.
Right.
And that's good and bad. It's good because I can focus on what I need to focus on. But then sometimes I'll get asked a question like, well, I don't know because I'm not out there to see it. So all that to say, I don't know. I won't be in Canada. I know that. But
Alberta's nice in the summer.
We've joked a couple times about if we're going to have some sort of mountain retreat in North Carolina. And maybe that falls in line with the same time that Caroline will be 18 and she'll be going on to do something else. And Megan and I have freedom and we can go do whatever we want and bring Harper May with us. I don't know. I do enjoy working here. If I didn't, I wouldn't get up and come here every day. It's a long way. But it kind of changes on based on what our next hire is. I'd love to have a HR person to hand that off once we get to a point where we need that. I'd love to have a bookkeeper who, once we're big enough, and that's a necessity to have someone to do all that. But right now, I enjoy the process, all those little things for the most part. It's kind of fun having different things. Like this morning, I was catching up on emails from Friday. I was talking with our Crensley people, getting that paid, paying some other stuff, helping Kyle with some issues he was having, talking to Bryce about the new aerial packages that we're putting up. I still kind of have my hands in pretty deep in SKU labs and the back end of everything going on. So I still have that varied job every single day, which I kind of enjoy.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a little bit of a lull in evolution and more of a cleanup of the evolutionary steps that we've taken, I think. And so I think that, we'll have another leg up come, next year, this fall. But right now we're in the period of cleanup, and fixing and organizing and building systems. And I think that those, I can only hope that those systems will then be able to receive what I believe to be the future greater volume that's going to come out of this, as more and more people find out about us. And then, I would see you filling that, sort of CFO type role, that role of leading these individual narrowed departments, if you will, be responsible for, finding people, sourcing people to hire them, and but a much different way of hiring than, right. Hey, let's put an ad out there and whoever we get. It's no, let's tell the story of who we're looking for. I mean, to me, that's way more fun, to find the next person is going to be here for the rest of their life. That I think is powerful. And I do think, this next facility, we're going to learn a lot, and you're going to play a major role in that, in the development of the facility and making sure that facility, gets paid for, functions, gets, organized and orchestrated to where we can get into that building, and then what does this building become? It's going to be a really interesting time.
And Matt came in the office the other day and told me, you handed me the estimates for the new building and said, oh, by the way, you're going to be the general contractor for this too.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for telling your story. We're going to go through what we found is that some of the young guys don't have a 2-hour-long story, but we're gonna grow with them and get to know them as well. And so I don't know who do you think we should do next?
I see you said.
So the next video will be on. So what I want to do is put this on the podcast, and it'll be on the YouTube channel. We might as well put it inside the Hex as well. So put it on the 3 platforms, and then the next video will be inside the Hex only. And then we'll probably do 2 or 3 inside the Hex, and then we'll do Mike on YouTube, same thing, YouTube, podcast, and inside the Hex, and we'll build out this Rolodex of meeting the team. The main reason why I want to do inside the Hex is because I think that that's where I want to drive you there because that's where we share the really personal stuff, the really business-oriented stuff. I just made a video talking about perfectionism and where I'm at on that in my life, as I sat in front of the camera and attempted to formulate some cohesive thoughts on that. And so that's where I put that kind of stuff. And then, the YouTube channel, we do some of it, but Inside the Hex is where we really do all that stuff. So
yeah, and as a brief commercial for Inside the Hex, because I watch every single video on both of them. And I think of myself as I watch other YouTube videos. Do I care about the content this person is creating and putting out? And do I want to know more about them, or do I just care, okay, just show me how to make the beer can burger, Sam the Cooking Guy. I don't care about what you have going on elsewhere. So if you care at all about maybe business aspect, that's one of the great things, and other people have commented on this. Matt's pretty open about the way we do things, how things work, the numbers behind it, very transparent, because that's a huge thing for people to be able to see. Like I joke when I go somewhere and there's a $13 hamburger, I'm like, I don't want a $13 hamburger. There's no such thing as a $13 hamburger. But the hamburger's $3, but the insurance for the person who's working to bring it to you, and the electricity and the sales tax and blah, 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 all this stuff adds up, and then it's a $13 hamburger. And so if you want to know kind of behind the scenes and the way things work and see some fun stuff too, that's for you. If you just want to come and watch car wash videos, then that's probably not for you. I can appreciate that too.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next interview or whatever other crazy video we come up with. So we got 19 or 18 interviews to do. So it's going to take a while. Several months. I'm sure I'll lose interest halfway through it, and we'll have to keep me fighting through it. So make sure you make comments. Tell me to get this stuff done. Sign up for Inside the Hex so I make sure that I do this. So anyway, thanks for watching.